And the other big story today, just about a half an hour ago, Governor Walker formally announced he is running for president. We brought you that speech live from Waukesha.
And joining us now on News 3 at 6 are Eric Franke and Jessica Arp, beginning our team coverage, guys.
Mark and Michelle, good evening from Waukesha, where it is very warm and it is very loud. But the crowd, well, they were obviously very supportive of the governor. This is one of the hotbeds for the GOP, really, in the entire nation. Jessica Arp, our political reporter, you've heard a lot of speeches from Governor Walker, victory speeches. This kind of sounded along those lines, I suppose.
It definitely sounded like that. I mean, this was a fired up Governor Walker that we saw today. This was a pretty hawkish Governor Walker that we saw too, taking a pretty hard line on some things. But there's a reason that they held this event today here at the Expo Center in Waukesha. It was all to try to remind folks of the recall election. This is where he celebrated a win there, and he tried to use that as an example to say this was the kind of fresh new leadership he would offer in Washington.
To do that, we need new, fresh leadership. Leadership with big, bold ideas from outside of Washington. The kind of leadership that knows how to get things done, like we've done here in Wisconsin. Since I've been governor, we took on the unions and we won.
Now, that was, of course, not all that the governor had to talk about here today. In a speech that went about 32 minutes or so, he expounded on his plans for foreign policy in the country, saying on day one he would reverse a deal on Iran, saying he'd repeal Obamacare, other regulations put in place by President Obama, saying he wanted to restore defense spending, also moving on to education, saying no Common Core, saying he'd also approve the Keystone Pipeline on his first day in office. All of this meant to prove that he is a fighter.
See, it doesn't matter whether you come from a big city or a suburb or a small town. I will fight and win for you.
Now, the governor not talking today, as you heard, Charles. Well, we did see protests here, about 50 folks lining a road outside of the Waukesha Expo Center here today, drawing attention to what they say have been harmful policies in the state of Wisconsin, saying that they would also be harmful to the country. Now, some of the things we didn't hear the governor talk about, you heard Charles Franklin talk about it in our analysis a little bit ago. He did not bring up immigration. He also did not bring up marriage. Two of those have been issues he has faced controversy over. Obviously, this is going to be a very long road, but I would say as a first speech out of the gate, this is going to establish him on a lot of different levels and really put him in a competitive frame with those 14 other candidates he's now facing.
Road indeed, one that'll take him to South Carolina, Las Vegas, Iowa in the coming days, and a lot of folks focusing on Iowa when it comes to Governor Walker, including News 3's Leah Linscheid, who has a look ahead at the road ahead in the Hawkeye state for Governor Walker. Leah?
Hi, Eric. Yep, we're here at Walker's Iowa headquarters in Urbandale. That's a suburb of Des Moines. Now, Walker kicks off his announcement tour tomorrow, where he heads across the country to announce his presidential run. He's making 10 stops in this state alone. That's more than double the amount of stops he's making this week in any other state. And here joining us today is Craig Robinson. He's the editor-in-chief of the Iowa Republican. Thanks so much for joining us here.
Problem.
So why is Iowa so important to the Walker campaign?
Well, it's important to a lot of campaigns because this is where it all starts. You know, the proximity of a neighboring governor running for president, Iowa is obviously going to be a key part of his nominating strategy. And so this will kick off the entire nominating process in February, and that's why Iowa gets so much attention.
And he's already one of the front runners according to the polls. How's he hanging in there comparable to the other Republican candidates?
Sure, it's a huge look. I think he's the 15th candidate in the race. I lose count all the time. But he has been the front runner in the Iowa polls since February. And he's been able to maintain not only just the lead, but a sizable gap between him and the second place people in the polls. So that makes him, maybe he might not be the front runner in the race nationally, but he's definitely the Iowa front runner.
Now, what are some weaknesses Walker might encounter while he's here in Iowa?
Well, number one, you get a weakness when you are the front runner. You have, 14 other candidates with their sights on you. And so anything in your record or you know, how your state's performing might become an issue in this campaign. But, you know, he gets to set the pace. And so while there will be a lot of people wanting him to take him off of that front-running status in Iowa, I still think that it's an advantage being able to kind of set the pace early on.
Okay, thank you so much, Craig. And coming up on News 3 at 6 a little later, we're going to be talking with a campaign spokesperson here in Iowa on what is already being done to help Walker, as well as hearing from some Iowa Democrats. They're sounding off on Walker's announcement today. Back to you, Eric.
Talking about the long road ahead, and that really is a long way. This is a grueling, a marathon of sorts when it comes to politics, the race for the White House. And just between now and Iowa, trust me, the temperature's here very warm. It'll be a lot colder in Iowa come next winter. Let's go back to Mark and Michelle in Madison.
All right, thank you, Eric, for your coverage, along with Jessica Arp and Leah Lynchide for us from Iowa.
Yeah, kind of warm in that hall.
It looks warm, definitely.